Hola clase. Today we're going to be talking about los pronombres de complemento directo, or direct object pronouns. So basically, if we take a look at this in English, this is a pretty common phrase for this time of year around St. Patrick's Day, kiss me, I'm Irish. What we are going to be working on saying and forming in sentences is how to say this me part. How to say it correctly in Spanish, and also where to put it in the sentence. I've touched on this a little bit, but today I really want to talk about how we form it correctly and where we put it in the sentence. So, to clarify, we do have different pronouns that we already know. We know subject pronouns. Those are the ones that you find in the verb box. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. Those are subject pronouns. They help us determine what form of the verb we need. We are not talking about subject pronouns. We're talking about direct object pronouns. And basically what that means is it comes after the verb. It's the object of the verb, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I did want to clarify that we are not talking about subject pronouns or things that come before the verb. So if we take a look at especially it, because that's going to come up a lot today, there are subject pronouns that have to do with it, and there's object pronouns that have to do with it. So let's take a look at subject pronouns. Let's say we're talking about a shamrock. You were drawing one and you said, my shamrock is the best clover ever. It is better than every other. This is an example of a subject pronoun, it, because it's coming before the verb is. We are not talking about that in Spanish, even though they look the same in English. A direct object pronoun also uses it. We said, I gave my shamrock to my friend. I bought it for her last night. Notice that in English we have both it and it. As I've said before, English is actually pretty confusing. These two its, although they look the same, are completely different. One is a subject pronoun and one is a direct object pronoun. Even though they look the same, they're very, very different. And in Spanish, it's actually a little bit easier. They are very different. We are not talking about a subject pronoun today. We are talking about the direct object, or things that come right after the verb. The it that comes after the verb. So, why do we have to use pronouns? Why is this something that I'd really like for you to learn and for you to see in your writing? Let's take a look at this. Let's say I was writing about this shamrock that I drew in art class or something ridiculous. My shamrock is the best clover ever. My friend loved the shamrock. She thought the shamrock was so thoughtful. She saw the shamrock yesterday. She showed the shamrock to her friends. If this is the way that we wrote, I hope you would agree with me that the noun shamrock is repeated a lot, and it sounds very elementary because we are repeating words over and over and over again. So we use pronouns to replace nouns, make our writing more condensed, and also make it sound more elevated and more advanced. If we spoke like this all the time, my shamrock, 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 we would sound very elementary. And I want to take your writing to the next level because you guys are ready to do that. So we use pronouns to replace nouns that we repeat over and over and over again. So these are what they look like in English. Again, we have our subject pronouns, I, you, he, she, you, we, and they, and y'all. Those come before the verbs. We're not talking about before the verbs. We are talking about after. So this is what they look like in English. Me, like the example that I gave in the beginning. Kiss me, I'm Irish. You, for instance, I gave you a homework assignment. We have him and it, like maybe I saw him last night, or I texted it to my friend. Us, again, the server served us food last night, or them and y'all. I saw them, or I saw you guys last night at the play. Again, these are all pronouns that come after our verbs in English. So, now here's what they look like in Spanish. Again, we are not talking about yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellas, ellos, or ustedes. This is what they look like in Spanish. We have me, te, and nos, which should look familiar if you learned about gustar. They look the same, even though they represent different things. And now we have lo and la and los and las. And these should look familiar to you as well. Sometimes los, las, and la can mean the if they come before a noun, but obviously these are going to be related to the verbs, and so they mean different things. So let's take a look at how this works. Let's take a look at this sentence. Juan compró el boleto para el baile. The first thing that you need to do if you're trying to replace something, if you're trying to see if you can use these pronouns, is you find the verb of the sentence. In this case, compró. Then you ask the question, who or what is being, and I say verbed, even though that's not really a word, it helps you find the direct object pronoun. You ask yourself, who or what is being purchased in this case? Who or what is being purchased? If we ask that question, if we answer that question correctly, we learn that the ticket is being purchased. The ticket then is our direct object that we can replace with one of our pronouns. So now we can replace it with it if we'd like to. So we go down to our box. It is singular and masculine, so we're going to go down to that part of our verb chart. Hopefully at this point in time it's obvious to you that it's going to be lo because it's singular and masculine. And now we replace it. Oops, my little circle is off. I apologize. That should be down here with compró. There's our verb. Here's boleto. Juan is going to stay the same, and the rest of the sentence is going to stay the same. We're just dealing with the verb and the direct object pronoun. And as always in Spanish, our order is going to be a little bit different. The verb is actually going to go second. Then we're going to replace el boleto with the pronoun that we already found, lo. And lo is going to go directly before our conjugated verb. So in English, we would say Juan bought it. But in Spanish, our order is going to be Juan it bought. Doesn't quite flow as nicely, but that is the order that we have in Spanish. So our final sentence is Juan lo compró para el baile, or the rest of the sentence. Let's take a look at another example. We have los chicos abren las puertas mucho. Again, our first step, if we need to know can we use a pronoun, we find the verb, abren. We ask ourselves who or what. In this case, what is being opened? The doors are being opened. Because we were able to answer that question, we can replace las puertas with them. Maybe we were talking about the doors over and over and we don't want to say doors anymore. We want to say them. Now we go to our chart. We obviously go to the plural side. We have a feminine plural noun, so we're going to replace it with las. Again, the rest of the sentence stays the same. We're going to move the verb. We're going to replace las puertas with las and put that right before the verb. Our final sentence, los chicos las abren mucho. One last thing as we wrap up here, you can replace people as well if they're the direct object. And I don't want you to get scared by this little but we're going to talk about why that's there in just a moment. So, veo a los estudiantes. I'm looking at the students. I see the students. Again, we find the verb, veo. We ask who or what. Who or what is being seen? Obviously, the students are, so we're able to replace them with them. But notice that I've underlined this as well. We're actually going to replace that whole phrase. So once again, we go to our chart. We're replacing it with los because it's a group of students and there's boys and girls in the group. So we're going to replace with los. Our verb moves forward. Obviously, we're going to replace it with this los. And so our final very short sentence is los veo. Notice that went away. The is basically called a personal pronoun. And apparently I have another example here for you guys. So this is always there when it goes verb, person. We invited Maria and Elena. When it's verb and person, we have to add this here. It's called a personal Why? Mother Spanish wanted to complicate your life a little bit. But notice that we treat it exactly the same and we group it with what we are replacing. So it's really not that big of a deal. We just replace it with the people that are our direct objects. So our final sentence was las invitamos. We invited them, or we invite them, depending on the context of the sentence. So like I said, that personal a just means that the direct object are people. The people that follow are the direct object. That's basically what it means. You should include that in your writing as well. It's a little bit more advanced and people tend to forget it, but if it goes verb, person, you need a personal a there. Let Miss Weiss know that you have finished this lecture and are ready for some practice, or if you have any questions. Gracias, clase. Muy bien.